I'm Mark Sneeringer. I'm a business process improvement consultant working with Halcyon Northwest. What I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about today, tell you a little bit about a seminar that we just presented, introducing folks to Lean. The seminar was took place about a couple weeks ago, and basically it's an introduction to one of the main pieces of continuous improvement, the Lean methodology. During the seminar, what we tried to do was to give people a basic understanding of some of the key elements of Lean and the concept of flow, um, doing some also looking at the definitions of value added and non-value added time and waste, and then focusing in a little bit more on the categories of waste and how to recognize them. So let's talk a little bit about the 5 steps of lean thinking. This comes from a book by Womack and Jones that was written in the 1990s, and it really laid out sort of the 5 steps, or the five main concepts that when you're talking about lean. And it starts with specifying the value from the customer's point of view. So what do they value in the product or the service that you're delivering? And then the second piece is then identifying the value stream or the process by which you deliver that value to the customer. Maybe it's the manufacturing of product, maybe it's how you run a service that you deliver to that customer, but looking at that value stream and looking for waste in it and start removing that waste. And when you get that waste out of there, that allows the value to flow more freely. So think about it like a stream, and you're pulling the rocks out of the stream, and the water moves more quickly and and more consistently. That leads to the fourth piece, which was when that value is flowing predictably and quickly, the customer can actually pull that value rather than you pushing it out to them. So rather than you, say, building products, pushing them into a warehouse, and then pushing them out to a store, the customer can actually pull those products toward them. And then finally, the whole thing, when you get this running well, you keep improving toward perfection. You're never going to actually get to perfection, but this is how get into this mode of continuous improvement. A key focus of lean is to look at where the value added work and the non-value added work are in a process. So in a typical process, 85–90% of the stuff that goes on doesn't add value that the customer is willing to pay for. So it's a very target-rich environment from the standpoint that there's a lot of things that are going on within a process that are potential to eliminate. So when you think about how a lot of traditional improvements happen, the focus is on that value added part. How can I do that better? How can I do that faster? And even if you cut that time in half, you really haven't made a serious dent in how much time it takes the process to deliver the customer's value. But if you cut that non-value added time in half, then you've got a much faster process, much closer to what the customer would really like to see. So the focus then is on what are these wasteful things, or what are the wastes that are in your process that you might be able to take out. And in the seminar, we went into a bit deeper discussion of this, gave a couple examples, but basically the idea is focus on the red bars, the non-value added, and frankly, you can almost leave the value added alone because of the big changes you're going to be, big improvements you're going to get when you get rid of the waste. So speaking of waste, one of the there is a mnemonic or a way to remember some of the categories of waste, and that's if you remember the name Tim Woods, and that stands for the 8 different kinds of waste that you see in a lot of processes. And these were originally laid out for manufacturing processes, but they also happen in transactional or service type processes. So I'm going to quickly go through here. So transportation is basically just moving people or product or parts or whatever, moving them around. So, if you pick them up in a warehouse, you move them out to the line, that's transportation. Are there ways to reduce that? Inventory. That one's pretty obvious. If you've got a lot of inventory sitting around, it's not moving. It's not moving toward being valuable for the customer, and so it's a waste. So as you clean up your process, inventory should go down. But when you see big piles of inventory, that usually is a good indication that there's something going on there that you should be addressing to bring that inventory down. The third, the M in Tim Woods is motion, and this is sort of like transportation, but it's usually within the actual workstation or within the actual area somebody's doing something. So if you've got an assembly process going on and you have to take the part, flip it over, put something on it, flip it back over again, put something else, attach something else, that's motion. And so the idea is how do you minimize that and still get the same product out? The W in Tim Woods is waiting, and that's usually caused by a slow step in a process, sort of backing up the process. So the things downstream from that, or the operations, so the people downstream for that, end up waiting for the product to get to them. Um, in a in a transactional situation, waiting might be you sitting in a doctor's office waiting for the doctor to show up. That's a waste in that process that can and should be addressed. And frankly, there's some great examples of where they're going after things like how long people have to wait. So there's 2 O's in Tim Woods. The first one is over processing, and this is when you work on the product or the work on the service more than the customer really needs. This is like putting a really shiny surface on a product that the customer's immediately going to dig into the ground and get all scratched up. The surface just isn't something they really need, and so that's an example of over processing. Overproduction is when you make more than you need or you make it earlier than you need. So the customer wants 50 of something, but it's easy for you to do a 200 piece production run. So you make 200 and you have 150 sitting around. That's overproduction, and that leads to the inventory. And then the D is defects. Where are things that, what are problems with the product or the service? And how are they impacting you and impacting the customer? And then finally, skills. Skills is not using the people's brains that you actually have working in a process. There's a quote from Henry Ford that goes something like, "Every time I ask for a pair of hands, a brain comes along with it." And frankly, you want that brain because these are you want to make sure you're using all the capabilities of the people in the process. So anyways, so Tim Woods is a way to remember these waste categories. When you go out and you look at a process, keep this in mind, and you can probably find things that are non-value added that you would get rid of, or you want to try to get rid of as quickly as possible. So last thing I want to talk about is how would you deploy lean? And there's a great model out there, which is a phased model where the first phase is the leadership and the organization gets ready for it. So you, at the end of that phase, you're saying yes with your eyes wide open that you really want to do this. So it's fairly short phase, but it's an important one to make sure everybody's on board. Second is a pilot or a model line. where you try out the process and make sure it works in your organization. It also gets other people in the organization, as they see what's happening there, a little bit excited, so that when you move into phase 3, when you deploy across your full organization within your walls, you've got more of a pull than a push going on. That leads, once you get that up and running, phase 4 is taking it out to your suppliers, to your distributors. So the rest of your extended value chain. And then finally, phase 5 is where you sustain things to make sure the improvements and the culture really changes. First phase is maybe a month. The other phases get longer. The whole thing can take probably 3 to 5 years to maybe get to, an operation that you're working in out to phase 5. So one of the things that comes out of this sort of a deployment is moving from applying lean or applying continuous improvement just as a set of tools. It builds up through the system driven, where there's a structure of the tools in the context of whatever business that you're in. And then finally, you arrive at what's called a principle driven deployment, which is really that you've got the principles embedded in your culture. I've seen this where it actually changes the way people approach work. So that was really what we covered in this first seminar. Our plan is to do a series of these where we're going to explore lean in a bit more depth and also look at some other aspects of continuous improvement. Thank you.